Hello and welcome to Talkin Pitchside, the podcast where you can get all your MLS and U.S. men's national team information. You can already tell right off the gap, this is no PJ, this is Tony. It's a solo cast this time. I was left to my own doing, and so, of course, I had to. This is our first podcast since Arsenal has won the league. This is no longer a Tottenham podcast. This is an Arsenal podcast. And just want to shout out Arsenal and represent them today. I'm got a little bit more pep in my step, and it gives me the juice here to do this solo cast by myself. I say that I'm by myself. We will have a visit from Stin for Stin's picks later today. But for the time being, it's going to be just me, and we've got a lot to talk about. Obviously, I want to hit up on all the matchups that we're going to get into here as our last wave before we start the World Cup, which is just crazy that we're already here. But before I get into that, a couple news and notes that I want to touch on. First one was there was some news today about Chris Richards, his ankle injury that he received while playing for Crystal Palace. It was initially scheduled or kind of talked about as a torn ligament or torn ligaments, plural, in his ankle. However, it sounds like those initial reports were a little bit more intense than what it actually is. He was now listed as questionable for the Conference League final, but not expected to miss any World Cup time, which is really good for USA because obviously if he goes down, our confidence goes down with that. So really shaky times there. Hopefully everything is fine. I'm sure we'll see how that all pans out once we start getting the ball rolling and get these friendlies before the World Cup going. So hopefully we'll see him for that. But definitely worth noting that U.S. men's national team fans just had a little bit of a scare there. And in other words, too, kind of switching a little bit towards our MLS, is that there is news today that they could be experimenting with a new rule with the International Rules Association that basically stops the clock anytime that the ball is out of play, which I know you guys are all begging for what I think about this. And I don't really know yet, but I from what I've seen, it is very preliminary in the conversations that have been going on between IFAB and MLS. And ultimately, what this rule is trying to achieve, what it's going after, I do like, because I think it puts so much of the time wasting to bed right away. Like all the theatrics that just kind of, in some ways, make our sport look a little bit soft and annoying. Like a lot of that will get crushed right on the spot. Now, I understand that could maybe kill kind of the flow of things, and there's kind of the romanticism of the added time at the end, and I get all of that, and those are the kind of things that I'm reserving as well, that I don't necessarily want to give up. But I think it's also important to remember before we freak out too much. I mean, it's very preliminary, and the report from The Guardian, which was kind of the groundbreaker on this, was pretty vague because there isn't much decided on this yet. But I could not imagine a world in which they did not take this to MLS Next Pro first. To try it out. They've done that with a few things that have been hit or miss, like the 10-second sub rule. They've tried out the PKs at the end of ties, which is something that Leagues Cup adopted. So there's been some success with that, and I think it's been a great testing grounds for these kind of new experimental rules. And it could be something that maybe become a normal part of our game. I don't know. But all that to say, I saw some people jumping up and down, and I don't think we're nearly to that point yet. So just a couple interesting news and notes there, but we have to hop in now to all these matches. We got a full slate, 15 games going on here before we call it a World Cup break. And we actually start in an unfamiliar place at 2:45 on a Saturday instead of our noon Toronto games or early Toronto games. We got St. Louis hosting Austin. St. Louis, obviously, up and down season, mostly more downs. But as far as where their expectations are, this is a team that's a little bit above par for the course for what we expected from them. And now they're taking on an Austin team that we discussed on Tuesday, just fired their coach and just fired their GM. So they're looking for a dead manager bump on this one. Austin are winless in 6 straight away matches. It is just, they've been awful on the road. And obviously just lost to Sporting Kansas City at home. I know that they're starting to get some of their key players back and things will look a little bit different. It's really hard. Obviously, that's the allure of the dead manager bump, is that you don't know what the interim's going to do, if they're going to keep it the same, if they're going to shake it up, who they're going to start, who they're going to sit. And I think that makes for a pretty tough task at hand, even though this Austin team traditionally is pretty bad on the road. So this one is a very interesting one. I like that it has its own window just because of this. But at the end of the day, I'm going to lean the home team on this one. I think I'm trusting you on DeMay in the process here, and making things, I guess, improve over time. And I think that Austin right now is just the right team to do so, coming at home. So I'm going to go against the grain on the dead manager bump there, but I truly believe that St. Louis is in a little bit better spot than Austin currently. So with that, we'll move also along in the Western Conference, another standalone game here, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, I should mention, for all of our listeners that are not in our time zone. But Minnesota United hosting Real Salt Lake. Minnesota United has been up and down recently, as a lot of these teams have, now that I'm saying that. But this is a matchup that Minnesota has dominated historically. Now, RSL has gone through this rough patch where they have, honestly, for these past few years, kind of struggled to maintain relevancy. And this is kind of the first year in a while where they're a team in the West that people have to be afraid of and have to respect. That being said, to me, it comes down to personnel. Who's available for RSL? We didn't have Diego Luna last game. I think they're trying to kind of limit him prior to the World Cup. Xavier Gozo has been fantastic. There's conversations about sending him to the World Cup too, which some people really believe in and some people really don't. At the end of the day, I just think that one thing that we have not seen from RSL that I think Minnesota is going to show them is a deep block, and RSL has just been really frustrated by those. In past matches where they've dropped points kind of disappointingly, they kind of get a little bit befuddled and trying to break it down. And I think it comes down to, their top guys like Gulavogi and Solans, Marchuk, and, those guys, they don't have that line breaking ability when the lines are really thin, or the space between them is really thin, rather. So all that to say, I just don't think that they're going to be able to get it done offensively. I like Minnesota at home. I think the RSL is going to even overextend themselves to try and break down Minnesota. And so we'll see a trademark Minnesota transition goal, and probably Kelvin Yeboah capitalizing on that. So I like the home team on this one. I believe in Minnesota here, which is a little bit against the grain for me. I still really love RSL and the improvement that they've had, but at the end of the day, I just got to stick to my brain on this one. So moving on to now, we got our slate of 7:30 games, starting with Charlotte hosting New England Revolution. This is a pretty curious game to me. Charlotte, pretty cold, but had a good game against Toronto. Really made them, look like a team that had been missing a lot of players. On the other hand, we got New England, who came against an impressive Minnesota team at home and won. New England's been fantastic on the road, has been pretty lackluster. Or sorry, I got that backwards. New England's been fantastic at home, pretty lackluster on the road. But it's challenging because New England has been the better team this season comparatively to Charlotte. And, despite the recent win, Charlotte, for the most part, has been floundering a little bit. So I think that I'm going to go with a draw in this game. I'm going to say that those kind of differences equal out. I think that right now, this has been a Charlotte defense that I wouldn't trust a one-dimensional New England offense against. Like, I think that they will, score a few on this. Matt Turner's been fantastic so far. He's really been making some noise going into the World Cup. And unless Pep Biel gets active, I just don't see how this Charlotte team is really going to rally here. The New England defense has not been the greatest, but a quiet kind of uphold of part of the success that they've been having. So with that, I'm going to take the draw on this game. But we'll keep moving. We got more 7:30 matches. DC United against Montreal. I think last year this was 1,000% a sicko match of the week. I think it still is. It's pretty gross, but at the same time, I feel like both these teams have improved a little bit comparatively to last year. Obviously, DC United, big overhaul. And where they sit in the table currently is in a playoff spot, which is very foreign for us to say. Montreal, not so much. So I got to take DC here. Got to trust my guns. This is just a classic home game. You have to pick who's at home when you think that they're better. You don't second guess this when you're trying to guess these things. Prince Owusu probably going to do some damage like he always does. But the DC team has been a little bit more generally put together. They seem to be operating a little bit more like a unit. Monteneu, the DP that from Romania, he's been playing normal minutes now. He did not start the season like that. He got hot when he first jumped on the scene with 4 goals. Has cooled off a little bit, but I still think he's been putting in some good shifts, and it's been a good 1-2 punch to throw in with Baribo, who's just absolutely lethal in the box with any kind of loose ball. He's just a finisher and just a poacher, like a fox in the box kind of guy. So between those two, obviously I cannot trust the Montreal defense with those guys who have so far this season proven that they can score. So I like DC at home here. I don't think that's a very crazy result that you wouldn't expect by any means. But moving along, we've got FC Cincinnati hosting Orlando, also in the 7:30 slot. This is a game here where, FC Cincinnati has had this crazy season. Lots of goals scored, lots of goals allowed. And conveniently for all the neutral viewers in this one, Orlando has not had as many points, but they've also had lots of goals scored and lots of goals allowed. They're coming fresh off a 4-1 win against Atlanta at home. So now taking on the road here, this is a game that I think the over-under is incredibly dependent on whether Robin Johnson is playing or not. I've not seen any specific injury news on him recently, but he left the game early last weekend, and I really fear for this Orlando defense, especially when he's not there. When he is there, it's still a leaky defense, and they have their own problems. So in that case, I think that there's no reason to overthink this, even as a homer. FC Cincinnati's just got the guns all around here. We're also in crunch time now. I think that we're going to see a good shift from Miles Robinson. Not that he's going to play the whole game because they're really limited in his minutes to protect him. But this is his last performance before the World Cup rosters, decision gets made. And obviously you want to leave a really good taste in all the coaches' mouths that you just watch. So I think Miles is going to kind of pull out all the stops here from this one and try and play as hard as he can. I just think that obviously Evander and Danke will not really struggle against this Orlando defense. So taking Cincinnati at home, that's a no-brainer. Next up, we're moving to 8:30. We got Chicago Fire hosting Toronto FC. Another one where I think you really want to favor the home team here. Chicago certainly has been in solid form, just fresh off a road win at Montreal 2-0. And then there's Toronto, is arguably the most injured team in this league at the moment, and it's been impactful players too, with Mihailovic, Josh Sargent, Cifuentes, Richie Larea. Like all these guys have been really hurt. Toronto's depth has been totally tested, and I don't know if any team could really stand the amount of injuries that Toronto has just had. And on top of that, it's Toronto, who has not been known to be the deepest team for a while. So all that to say, I don't think there's any reason to overthink this one either. Chicago should really take on this. I similarly, when I'm talking about players right before going off to the World Cup, Chris Brady, I think, has a lot to prove, trying to slip in as that third goalkeeper slot. He's looked really good recently. I don't think there's any reason to see a change in that. And then Hugo Kuipers is chasing that consecutive goal streak record, and this is a perfect game to have on the schedule while you're chasing that. I think that this has just been a lackluster Toronto team all around that is no chance really, I think, for Chicago. So we'll see if Kuipers holds it up, but Chicago certainly will come out guns blazing. Their attack's been looking really well. Toronto on the road has also just been not very good. It's just not much more left to say with that. It's just not going to be their game probably. So Carrying on, we got Nashville versus New York City. Nashville coming off a really impressive win against LAFC at home. New York City actually losing midweek in U.S. Open Cup to the Columbus Crew on the road at Columbus. So really deflating move there. Obviously, I think that the Maxi Morales stuff that we've talked about is pretty serious. It's pretty long term. So that's really going to change, I think, how this New York City team looks. They're going to rely on different minutes in that midfield, and the playmaking part of that is going to be a little bit lackluster, I think. It's going to be hard to figure that out. Nico Fernandez and Hannes Wolf are both guys that do really well when you play them in behind. It's just the ability for those through balls just really get sliced when Maxi Morales isn't there. So that's going to be tough to watch. But either way, the general trajectory of this New York City team has been pretty poor. Meanwhile, Nashville has been red hot despite all the fixture congestion. They're rotating and still winning, and they're beating other teams that we would expect them to, like in LAFC. But at the same time, like it's all been really important games, and it's what's put them, despite all the matches, they're on top of the Supporters Shield standings. So, again, another one. I know this is so boring and safe, but you got to take Nashville at home here. The two trajectories and like alone just speak enough for me. So we'll move along from that one. Next up, we've got red hot Sporting Kansas City, straight off of beating Austin. And Red Bull New York, obviously, it just finished up the Hudson River Derby last weekend against New York City as well, in a draw in that match. Sporting Kansas City, you got to be a little bit careful with them. This game, I think I'm actually going to go a draw. It's not the recency bias, and maybe a little bit of the recency bias, but what it mostly is for me here is that this Red Bull defense has just been so poor. Joveljic obviously can take advantage of any defense in this league, no matter how strong. You put him on an island, and he tends to figure things out and get his goals. So Red Bulls, I think, is a really prime attack that they can really, I guess, just disintegrate with. So, and you know, Red Bulls haven't kept a clean sheet in 14 matches, just to drive that home. So that is just it'd be a record basically if they could stop Sporting Kansas City, who scoring goals. I mean, everything's been kind of a problem there. Scoring goals probably hasn't been the biggest problem of all problems. So I just kind of like that Sporting Kansas City will just stir things up here. I think Red Bulls as a team are more talented. I think the youngsters have a good chance at shining in this game. But at the end of the day, I think that no one pulls away victorious in this one. Next up on the slate here, we got Colorado Rapids hosting FC Dallas. This is a really interesting match to me. Colorado off of an impressive win against San Jose. Granted, that San Jose team was rotated in the Open Cup quarterfinal, that is. They had some of the mainstays, but it's been a little bit of a banged-up San Jose team. So they do have the midweek game on them. Meanwhile, Dallas also just played San Jose, but in MLS and on Saturday instead of on Wednesday. With that being said, Dallas with a very impressive win as well. That was also a rotated San Jose team. San Sarver cult hero status is really starting to form after that match. And at the end of the day, this is like two teams that I think that Colorado has been a little bit shakier than Dallas has. Dallas has impressed me for what they've had, just the roster and the status that it's at right now. I've been impressed by them, and a lot of that's been on the heels of Musa, but other guys have stepped up too. I think that Dallas is going to play spoiler to Colorado here. I just have not really seen consistency from Colorado from result to result. And they just have a few fewer days from their last match just with the Open Cup. So I'm going to take Dallas on the road, playing spoiler, and heading into the World Cup with a good taste in their mouth. So we'll keep plugging along here. Next up, we got Portland and San Jose. Portland, I think regardless of this result, Phil Neville may be on his way out. So it'll be really interesting to see if he knows that, how he plays it. Is it just balls to the wall? And then San Jose has had a little bit of a rough go of it recently. Like I said, had some injuries that have really held them back. Timo Werner has just been really tough for them to handle. and neutralizes a lot of their attack. Preston Judd, Bo LaRue both had their moments, but it levels you down like a little bit there when you don't have Timo Werner. That being said, I do not trust Portland in this game. I think that San Jose still gets it done. They've played a lot of the kids, and I think a lot of the kids would be capable of beating this Portland team. It's just been a Portland team that has really struggled to kind of figure out who they are. David DeGoles DaCosta has not done anything. Velda, like in the game against Miami, I mean, it looked like he was not really getting along with many of his teammates. People are yelling at him. People are defending for him. It's just been a tough look for this Portland team, and it kind of makes you wonder if the locker room's already been lost. So I think this may be the final nail in the coffin for Phil Neville, and San Jose comes away with 3 points on the road for this one. Moving along, this is another interesting matchup here in the West. We got San Diego hosting Vancouver. San Diego coming off a heartbreaker against Cincinnati, conceding at the very last kick to tie it instead of win at home. Vancouver just lost last weekend to Houston in kind of a shock result where they fell 0-1 and didn't really generate much. They did not look like the Vancouver team that we recognize. Now, I think that a random away game at Houston is not the end-all, be-all for any team in MLS, but especially Vancouver. I'm going to chalk that result up to kind of a one-off right now. However, playing this San Diego team, they're a possession-heavy team. It's a weird game to try and get your rhythm back into because they're going to press high. San Diego, for the most part, I mean, they've had their bad mistakes, but for the most part, is very good at maintaining possession in their half and kind of breaking your press. And I think that they're going to kind of dance around Vancouver a little bit when it comes to what the possession is. Obviously, the fear with San Diego and what it always has been is that they've had a really hard time taking that possession and consistently turning it into dangerous opportunities. I think Vancouver is going to do a great job of sniffing that out and really limiting San Diego. I expect a low-scoring game from San Diego, if not maybe getting blanked. It's really this Vancouver side. Are they going to be clinical enough once they get those moments with the ball to turn around and be able to punish San Diego and find a result? So with that, I'm going to go with a little bit of surprise here. I'm going to say draw. I just think that both these teams may be a little bit on cruise control going into the World Cup. I need to shake it up a little bit. My heart right now is telling me go Vancouver, but I'm going to stick with the draw here, and just so I can get a little bit of variety in my guesses and not always going with the heavy favorite. So we'll move along. We got LA Galaxy hosting the Houston Dynamo. Houston just lost to St. Louis in the Open Cup, so they had a midweek game. Galaxy, on the other hand, have had a fresh week after freshly traveling over to Seattle and surprising most of MLS, but especially Seattle with a 2-0 result on the road. Peck had a standout performance in that game. I think that the Galaxy are another one of those teams that we're going to see, and they're going to be really inconsistent. There's going to be games where they look really on, and there's going to be games where they look really off. I mentioned this on Tuesday, but I really liked having the Hack-Glesnes combination at center back for the Galaxy. I think those two guys defend so stoutly and take care of the ball really well when starting to build up possession that it stabilizes the Galaxy's plan of attack, helps them really organize to find Peck and Paintsel in those dangerous areas and even get the ball to Marco Royce for him to pick that out and really send in those guys behind. So having that, I think, is going to be key, and I do hope that they stick with that. With this Houston team, you got to watch out for his Guilherme. He's been really strong this season. Bogusz has also made his mark on the season, as well as Jack McGlynn. These guys, this is a Houston team that's got guys now, and I do wonder if this kind of disassembles for the Galaxy, it could really disassemble. They have been, Houston, especially on the road, has been just pretty strong offensively. Their last 6 away MLS matches, they produced 26 total goals, or over 4 a game. So it's been really strong. The caveat to that, to back up a fact, is that LA Galaxy have only lost 3 matches at home against Houston. So a lot to roll around here. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to take a little bit warmer LA Galaxy side. I know Houston was surprising with Vancouver, but I think they're a little bit more on tired legs and on the road. So I'm going to take Galaxy for this game. And then that wraps it up for Saturday. We do have a slate of 3 games on Sundays, the final matches that we get to see of MLS until basically, I think they squeeze some more matches to welcome back coming in after the third place game of the World Cup. So we've got about a month break or so, and that's going to be a big break. So these are the last games. We got to drink them up and savor them. And unfortunately, the first one to talk about here is Columbus Crew versus Atlanta United. Columbus may have already used up their dead manager bump on that win I was mentioning in the Open Cup over New York City. Atlanta just fell pretty harshly to Orlando and really makes you kind of question everything that's going on there. I have to imagine that the new Columbus, if we want to call it that, will be able to prevail over Atlanta. I know Columbus's defense has really been struggling, but Atlanta's offense has been as dull as a butter knife. They just have not been able to get anything through. Latte Loth has just not picked up or had the Goss theorem that we were hoping. Miranchuk has been the sole bright spot of goal scoring, and he's supposed to be the playmaker. And then Albiron's been out for an extended time being hurt. So all that to say, I think that the Crew can get this one done at home. I expect them to win all 3. This is going to be probably a pretty rocky game just based on how both these teams have been struggling. But as hard as Columbus has been struggling, Atlanta's been struggling harder. So I'm going to give the result to Columbus here. Next up, this is our hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby of the week. It is Inter Miami versus Philadelphia. Inter Miami is the host in this one. Goes without explaining here. We got obviously Messi versus right now the Wooden Spoon leaders and dare I say favorites. It has looked really, really bad for Philly. It's been lackluster at best, and I just think that this high press Philly team, well, one is not really pressing together as a unit, and I don't think it's going to cause any problems for Miami. You really don't need to drop many players back to defend what they've got going on. And it seems like the off the ball movement for Philly has just not been clicking either. So this is not a hard team for Miami to defend. Yes, Miami's defense is leaky, but I just don't think that Philly is going to put a lot of pressure or be able to effectively put pressure, I should say, on Miami's back line. So then the flip side of that then is if Miami is not feeling the pressure, well, then they have the freedom and the ball to just bring it on. And that's the other side of it that Philly has struggled with, is just letting in goals. So obviously this one's all Philly. I think they send off Messi and friends to a nice little party to go off to the World Cup. And this is our final game before we say goodbye to MLS for a little while, and it's LAFC versus Seattle. This is a great nightcap, 9 p.m. on Sunday. I'm really excited about this matchup. Obviously, we have a struggling LAFC team. There's been interesting quotes floating around from Bouanga just talking about how they don't play the same way they did last year when him and Son were scoring a bunch of goals, and basically said everything about Marc Dos Santos without saying anything at all, and kind of brought a little bit more attention to the situation going on here, that maybe they are not setting themselves up as best as they can be. So obviously this is a Seattle team that is very strong defensively, has a very strong midfield core. It's going to be a challenge to see LAFC kind of break through and stress out the Seattle defense. However, we know that they can be capable of that against any opponent. And then on the Seattle side, this is a LAFC team that has one of the best defenses in the league right now. They have defended extremely, extremely well, and getting back some of these old names, but injured names like Ferreira and Morris have been back and playing most minutes now. still looking to shake off some of that rust, and it hasn't quite been there. And I just don't know if this defense is going to fall susceptible to them and their moves. So I'm going to take LAFC at home on this one. Seattle, that puts them on a little bit of a route, and like everybody that's struggling right now, it's just survive and get to the break. So I think that's kind of a little bit where Seattle's at, and they'll come back after the break and charge for the playoffs. But LAFC, for their ambitions, for their roster, for Heung-min Son, I think they need a result really bad in this game, and I think they get it. So that is my take on LAFC versus Seattle. And with that rounds out the last of our matches. That was the 15th match before we call it the end of the first half of this MLS regular season. It's been a crazy ride. I have, been really excited about where this has been going and what we've been doing. And it's setting the stage for an awesome second half of the MLS season. That'll be just must watch. It'll be right after the hype of the World Cup and getting all of that. So, really exciting. A little bit bittersweet. Gonna miss it, but we're gonna have some great soccer to entertain us while it's gone. With that, normally right now we would be talking kind of our World Cup corner and do our predictions, but I didn't want to go. I didn't think it was fair for me to do my predictions and just hang out to dry and not have PJ join me. So we'll re-grab that when PJ comes back next week and take care of that and dive into it. And then the focus is going to shift on, we'll recap these matches, and then the focus is going to shift heavy on the World Cup and these last friendlies. We're already seeing now a lot of the squad selections, seeing fun videos from players in Brazil as they're getting called up and celebrating with their families, true like NFL draft style moments, stuff like that. We're seeing some shockers. England announced their roster, and a couple players like Cole Palmer, for example, was left off and left a lot of people scratching their heads. There's going to be fun stuff like that to talk about, certainly. And obviously the U.S. men's national team is what we're mostly focused on, and that roster drop is coming very, very soon as well. So it's a great time to be a soccer fan. It's a great time to listen to this because we'll have you covered. So if you listen to this and you made it this far, thank you. And I'm going to give you a break from my voice because I almost ended this episode without Stin's picks. So let's hear what Stin has to say about all these matches.
Tactically, I am so intrigued by this game. I really hope the RSL can stay hot this week. Your bullet penalties continue to flow as fast as the Mississippi River. Call up Gozo. Minnesota 2, RSL 4. This game will be on full crackhead mode energy. New coach bump against a sorry team like Atlanta is a recipe for Columbus to get 3 points up before the World Cup. Columbus 3, Atlanta 2. Colorado fans have experienced so much inconsistency with this club. On the other hand, Dallas fans have an empty stadium but a full heart. Colorado crumbles. Colorado 1, Dallas 3. In honor of my GOAT, Kyle Busch, being from Las Vegas, I think it's only right to pick the Vancouver Whitecaps to utterly dominate here. RIP Kyle Busch, may God be with his family. San Diego 1, Vancouver 8. Sunday Night Soccer brings us some struggling squads. Remember when Gabon government fired Bouanga for losing in AFCON? I wonder how long the leash is for Mark Dos Santos. LAFC 1, Seattle 2.
Okay, and we're back. Thank you, Stin. As always, you've never let us down. Lots of goals in your predictions, and I love it. I also just appreciate the fact that you are tactically interested in any matchup, let alone RSL Minnesota. But RSL on the road, fantastic. That's going to be a huge result if they pull that off. I'm not sure I share that. Obviously, we got to talk about the RIP Kyle Busch game. Rest in peace, Kyle Busch. That's definitely really sad to hear. Honoring it by a 8-goal performance from Vancouver would just be all time. So, thank you from that. I guess you got Seattle on the road too. That's an interesting pick. A lot of against the grain stuff here. I agreed with you on Dallas. I agreed with you on Columbus. So a little bit here, a little bit there. We will see and compare notes come next week. But thank you as always, Stin, for that. Listener, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching or listening wherever you're consuming us. And we got some really good stuff coming. It's an exciting time to be a soccer fan. So till next week, see ya.